People-to-people exchanges are often great contributors to a better understanding between different countries and cultures. In this show, we're going to hear the stories of people who have become bridge builders between different cultures and peoples. We're going to meet three Europeans: Robert van Gulik, Dutch diplomat, writer and sinologist, who wanted to bring the wisdom, the knowledge and the beauty of Chinese culture to the West. Tineke van Gils, one of the best-known Dutch ceramic artists, whose life has been bonded with porcelain and the place it came from, China. And Eckehard Scharfschwerdt, the German doctor who calls China's Yunnan his second hometown. Robert van Gulik, the Dutch diplomat, writer and sinologist, may not exactly be a household name, but Judge D, the character he created, definitely is. And the stories about Robert van Gulik's legendary life continue to inspire. Stationed in China between 1943 and 1946 as a diplomat, he wanted to bring the wisdom, the knowledge and the beauty of Chinese culture to the West. Now his granddaughter, Marie-Anne Sulumiak, is also doing the same thing. Here's Marie-Anne telling the story of her grandfather.
I'm Marie-Anne Sulumiak. I am a granddaughter of Robert van Gulik and the founder of Musin, China Europe Design and G Projects. I'm French, Dutch and partly Chinese. I became close to China through my grandmother, Shui Shifang, who was the wife of Robert van Gulik. My grandmother was related to one of the great generals, Zhang Zhedong. It's through her story that I came into the life of Robert van Gulik. Van Gulik was stationed in China between 1943 and 1946. I like to call him the Dutch Mandarin. So he lived his life like a Mandarin. And as a diplomat, of course, he traveled around the world. But every day, if you look back at his diary, you could see set times for when he would practice the calligraphy, for when he would play the guqin. And my mother, when she would go to bed, she could hear the guqin, and then she could hear him type all night behind his typewriter to work on his books. So Robert van Gulik is best known for writing the Judge D novels. These are detective stories set in the Tang Dynasty. Judge D stories was an existent story which Robert van Gulik discovered. And he said, this is such a rich tradition, we should awaken it and bring it back to life. And he enjoyed it so much that he wrote 17 detective stories. Judge D was translated into 29 languages and is published in more than 38 countries around the world. At the time he was writing in the West, Sax Rohmer's book on Fu Manchu, which was characterizing Chinese as evil and dangerous, was out, and he wanted to bring the wisdom, the knowledge and the beauty of Chinese culture to the West. So that was one of the main reasons why he wrote Judge D. In China today, Judge D is, of course, a household name. A lot of Chinese people don't know that it was revived by a Dutch author. And so when you tell them this story, they start laughing because they're thinking, how can a Dutch man write a Chinese stories? It's as if you would say Sherlock Holmes was written by a Chinese writer. Back in 2009, we went to China to work on the documentary On the Track of Robert van Gulik. When we were in Shanghai, we founded a platform called D Projects to promote the legacy of Robert van Gulik. And through this platform, we organized numerous events. A lot of youth activities which we did were workshops for children. So we did that in Chongqing and Beijing, to also, in the Van Gulik spirit, be curious about your own culture and see how you can be creative around it and create new stories. After 5 years in China, I came back to Europe, first to Paris and then to the Netherlands, and I found myself doing a lot of projects in Rotterdam. I can still feel that there is a lack of understanding and knowledge of what is happening in China. We decided to start a platform called China-Europe Design next to the own consultancy I have, which is called Musin, where we also advise Chinese and Dutch creatives on how to collaborate and help them to start projects together. We organized these yearly conferences and we had many great speakers join us, including Ma Yan-song. He's designed the Phoenix here in Rotterdam, the new migration museum. This museum is the first cultural initiative which is designed by a Chinese architect. I also work with a variety of creatives, and one of them is the architects MVRDV. And here in Rotterdam, which is their home city, they have built the Depot, which is the first open art archive in the world. Inside there is an exhibition, and what makes Rotterdam so exciting and interesting is that it is historically the place where Chinese migrants have come to and where the first Chinese restaurant opened in the Netherlands. Fen Mei Hu, who we work together, has created this amazing exhibition which tells the story of Chinese migrants in the Netherlands. The Silk Road is very much ingrained in our cultures. The Belt and Road Initiative continues in that legacy, and I believe if we use it also as an exchange ways from not only China and the Netherlands, and not going from one direction but in all directions with all countries, it is an initiative which is key and urgent, and will continue also to enrich our cultures and understanding of each other. I feel there is a great need for the West and for Europeans to understand that China is changing so fast and is actually ahead of us in many ways, which we can also learn and benefit from. We need each other, and we need to be ambitious and also to dare to take risks and bring something new. Robert van Gulik brought the best out of two worlds. He created a new genre, let's say, by bringing the best of China and the West. And he made it accessible to both cultures, to all cultures, and that is true innovation. We need bridge builders that can bring both cultures together, create something new that will make a better world.
That report from Chun Pan and Gary Parkinson. When the first batch of porcelain was brought to Europe in the 16th century along the ancient Silk Road, nobody knew how far-reaching the influence of these dazzling wares would be on both cultures. Not only was the porcelain referred to as China to reflect its homeland, but it left trails on the cities and their inhabitants right up to the present day. One of those places is Delft in the Netherlands. Tineke van Gils from Delft is one of the best-known Dutch ceramic artists. Her life has been bonded with porcelain and the place it originated from, China.
I'm Tineke van Gils. I started my ceramic career in Amsterdam in 1984. I worked for almost 80 restaurants, made all the tableware, and that gave me a lot of skills in ceramics. In 1996, I moved from Amsterdam to Delft. Delft is the city of Delft Blue, and that's inspired by Chinese porcelain by Jing de Zheng. Because of my skills on the wheel and because of the teapots, I was asked to make 100 teapots for an opera, the Turandot, and that's a story that plays in the surroundings of Beijing. And this project brought me invitations to come to the south of China to make another 100 teapots with the porcelain from Dehua. In 2009, that was my first meeting with Dehua porcelain. And I found that my hands were made for this extremely difficult material on the wheel. I loved the porcelain there. I fell in love as a teenage girl. And later when I came home, I told the people everywhere that Blanc de Chine, that's the name of this white porcelain, that Blanc de Chine is the most beautiful girl in the classroom. And it is. From the first I was in China, I saw the old dragon kilns in the mountains near Dohua, and I realized it's going to change. I think when I go back to Dohua now, the old kilns will be closed, almost all of them. What I learned also in China is that things can change very, very quick. It can change in no time, and things can be reorganized in less than no time. I also learned in China to think big. You can realize things in art that are really impossible in the Netherlands, and everyone helps you. I like the term of being a bridge builder, but it's not really my intention to be a bridge builder. I think I became it natural. And when I came back from Dohua, I wanted to tell the stories about this amazing, beautiful ivory white porcelain. And my idea was to organize Chinese New Year in my village. I invited all interested potters all over the Netherlands. And I asked the Qigong master to do a tiger dance. I invited also the drummers of my village to play with Chinese chopsticks on my tableware, on my plates and bowls. And they gave an excellent concert. Via the ancient Silk Road, large quantities of porcelain reached East Asia, the Islamic world, and then from the 16th century also Europe. In Delft in the 16th, 17th century, we saw the qualities of porcelain, and we saw how it was made in Germany, but we couldn't reach that level. So we used the rural material from our earth. It was a grey clay, and we covered it with a white slip and painted blue on top, so it looked like Jingdezhen porcelain. In that way, we made a cheaper variation of the Jingdezhen porcelain in our way, and it got famous all over the world. The ancient Silk Road allowed the trade in silk and in lacquer and porcelain, but I think also it was an exchange of culture, and I think that's an important thing too. I hope the new Silk Road will go in the same way. When it comes to the opportunity of cultural exchange from the Netherlands to China, there's no limits. I hope new artist-in-residence programs will start. I hope we can go to China again to work as artist-in-residence. The uniqueness about ceramic art is that people don't have to speak the same language. I want to tell you a story about a segar maker, the one who's making the sagars in Dohua. When I was there, he was my big friend because he was making the sagars on the wheel and I was making the porcelain on the wheel. And those sagars protect the most exclusive material in the world, the porcelain from Dohua. And I showed my sagar project to the man. And when I came back 6 months later, he was in the corner of the field outside making the sagars, and instead of making a sagar, he transformed the clay into the body of a teapot. Without words, he laughed and smiled, and I recognized the basic shape of my teapot in his Säge. We had a very special moment. His welcome to me was more than words could say. Art can open opportunities to talk with other people. Art can tell much more than words can say. Art can talk where words end. I think that's an important thing.
That report was compiled by Chun Pan, Ai Yan and Gary Parkinson. Eckehard Scharfschwerdt is now quietly working as a general practitioner, GP, in the medieval town of Altensteig in the Black Forest of southern Germany. But he only returned there after an extraordinary 15-year period in China's Yunnan province, where he raised his family and was a doctor and a teacher, as well as an agricultural advisor. Let's hear him recount his family's experiences in the rural hinterlands, far from Beijing and the bustling cities of the coast.
My name is Eckehard Scharfschwerdt, and I also have a Chinese name, Xia Ai Ke. I'm a doctor, I'm a Christian, I'm a father of 2 children. I think living in China is a big part of my life. When we finally decided we would go abroad, we contacted different organizations and asked whether they would need doctors. And there was one organization, they said, oh yes, in the hinterlands of China, in Sichuan and Yunnan, then the government brought up that need for Heching. It's a small county town in Dali Prefecture. I can still remember the first night when we arrived by plane from Singapore to Kunming, and that was still the old airport, pretty close to the city center. We went on a bus and we were putting our noses against the windows and trying to take in all the sights. Then the children said, see, horse carts, horse carts. And in those days, the vegetables and fruits were still pulled in by horse carts. And then I thought, wow, that made me relax, and the children enjoy the new environment. As soon as we arrived in Heching, we knew that is the place we want to stay, and that is the place we want to see our children grow up, spend their childhood. And the people were very, very friendly from the beginning. It's an ethnic minority, they are called Bai. Actually one which is very eager to study. The hospital, that needed a lot of adjustment because it was still very underdeveloped, very simple in those days. The hospital had very little equipment. There was just one ECG machine, one ultrasound machine, one X-ray machine, just one piece for doing anesthesia. There was no computer when we first arrived at the hospital. But it quickly changed. Just maybe 3 years later, they built a new hospital. Every department now has 2 computers, so they were developing very fast. We really enjoyed being so close to the country life, and we're very grateful that they were so hospitable. Since I had to go in every month once, and I stayed with the farmers, I learned about their needs, their joys, their fears. Being on a mountain slope, there's no groundwater, and it's only rainy season. They had a few ponds which quickly dried up in dry season, and then there was no water left. So they asked me whether I could help them with digging water cisterns. And they thought, that is much better. That's a project raised by them. We agreed upon that we would give them the cement, pay a little bit for the labor when they have to cut out the stones from the mountains and build the cisterns up. And I would visit every month once and record their progress. So in the end there were more than 60 water cisterns. I think the Chinese government has done an incredible job in bringing out so hundreds of millions of people out of poverty. Our things was just tiny little parts to encourage them, to show them that they have the means themselves. They can come up with good ideas to improve, like the construction of the cisterns. There was one farmer who only had 3 years of primary school, but he came up with such good ideas. So for the second round of water cisterns, we could use his ideas. So I think this gave them more self-confidence. I think what the government has done is investing in infrastructure, lots and lots. The railway lines, the high-speed trains, that's really incredible. The highways they built. Even when I returned recently, this year in March, I discovered that now the highway leads to that remote county we had lived in the last 3 years. What I rather want to learn is how people relate to each other. I like the respect for the elderly. I like the respect for the teachers, which my children learned at school in China, and which I can't find much in Germany. Whatever politics is about, as people we can get along well with each other. I'm reminded of a little boy when we first moved to Herching, and he always came to play with our children, and one day he sat at the kitchen table and he thought for a while and he thought again, and then he came up and with a very bright sentence. He was very excited. He said, 中国人是人，外国人是人，我们都是人。Chinese are men, foreigners are men, we are all men. It was such a huge honor. They had told me just 2 weeks before, you are one of the 3 guys who give a speech. I gave the speech in Chinese, and the others gave it in English. I always thought I receive it for the people who allowed me to stay there in China so long. So I take it not for me, I take it for the Bai, for the Bai people, for the Hani people. Our children were nearly 2 and 3.5 years old when we left Germany. They grew up trilingual right from the beginning. I think their values were shaped not only by us parents, but also by their Chinese classmates and teachers and friends. I think our children could be even better bridge builders than we were. Our children grew up between the cultures, so I think they will be much better bridge builders and have even better understanding and find it easier to adjust to different environments, cultures and languages.
That story filed by Ayan, Yolo Abdavith and Gary Parkinson. With that, we conclude this edition of Footprints. Thanks for listening. I'm Bob Jones. If you're interested in hearing more about the lives of ordinary but incredible people in China, follow us on your favorite podcast platforms. Just key in Footprints and you can find more stories anytime, anywhere. We'll see you next time. Bye for now.